All righty, welcome everybody to our panel on design and visualization. I got to tell you, it feels so ridiculously good to be out among people again and through the era that we have just come through. You are in for a real treat today with this panel. You guys have some rock stars in the XR space that have been doing great work for a long time in their respective industries. And whether you're just getting started on a project or you've been in this world for a long time and want to know what's new and why, I think you're going to walk away with some great insights. We're going to start off with some introductions and then jump into questions, and we'll do that for about 30 minutes and then break for questions. So write down those questions, save them for the end, because you'll definitely have a great chance to get them answered. Quick background on me. So I'm Jay Wright. I'm the CEO of CAMPFIRE today. I have been in this space for about 15 years. I got started at Qualcomm in 2008, where I built a business and a product called Vuforia that you might be familiar with. And then we sold Vuforia to PTC. I ran Vuforia PTC for a number of years. And I had a big insight at the conclusion of that decade plus in XR, which was, hey, a lot of folks that just would like to get 3D off that flat screen and be able to collaborate with it in AR in real space. And so that's what we're doing with CAMPFIRE. I'll leave it there. There's a booth that we have if you'd like to check it out. Now, I'd like to start off with introductions. So each of the folks on the panel are going to tell you a little bit about their backgrounds, how long they've been doing this, and the kinds of things that they have been doing in XR.
Sure. So I'll go first. Hi, my name is Andrew Brokaw. I'm the virtual and augmented reality technical lead at CNH Industrial. So as a company, we design tractors, combines, agriculture vehicles, as well as construction vehicles like dozers and wheel loaders. I've been doing this work since about 2008, so about, 14 years now? It feels like a long time. Yeah. Yeah. Most of what we do is in the engineering space in terms of XR work. We do virtual prototyping, ergonomic simulations, styling type designer views, and essentially anything virtual prototyping to test on the vehicles before we build physical machines. So that's kind of most of what our XR experience is related to.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Wheeler. I am a technical fellow with Collins Aerospace. If you're not familiar with the name, I promise you that we have helped you get home safe. We do everything in an aircraft except for the body, the wings, and the engines. I have been in the XR space since 2005. I'm part of one of many teams that are working on XR across not just Collins Aerospace, but our larger Raytheon technologies. My team has created an application that's been around for 12 years now, and it earns back about 1,800% return on investment each time it's used for producibility analysis, which makes use of XR. Thank you. 1,800%. 1,800%.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Framars Mystery. I know it sounds like the most interesting name in the world, but not so much when going through middle school and high school. So I work with Mohawk Industries. We're a flooring manufacturer, one of the largest in the world. So probably if you're standing on a floor that's not concrete, we probably have made that flooring. I work with the visualization team. I had a bunch of separate visualization teams that deal with everything from 2D floor plans to help our customers visualize our products in their spaces, to 3D models, animations, and now AR, VR. We've in fact launched an app, an augmented reality app, probably one of the first in the industry, where you can load a product and visualize it in AR using your iPhone. So,
hi, I'm Allison Unitas. I work at Arcadis, which is a global natural and built asset consulting firm. I am the immersive technology lead and part of our digital transformation team. I've been in the XR space for about 5 years. It started in 2016. I was on a team that was building an augmented reality app to visualize groundwater contamination through the subsurface with environmental geology group. And that kind of was a catalyst for parts of our company we're learning about this types of technologies, but for our group and then connecting with other groups at the company to see the value of that kind of visualization and how it can improve understanding with all of our different stakeholders, and then really bring that to all of our company and look across all of the areas of the company that we have that do municipal water work and transportation, federal work, our environmental work, and look at where immersive technology or XR technology, where the value fits with what we're doing for our clients.
My name is Jim Barrett. I'm Vice President, Chief Innovation Officer at Turner Construction Company. Turner's now the largest general builder in the U.S. We have offices all over the world. We're about $16 billion worth of work, 11,000 employees. On any given day, we have about 100,000 people on our job sites all over the world. You'll know us, we do a lot of small and large projects, but you'll know us probably by the bigger ones. We did the new Yankee Stadium, actually did the original, did Madison Square Garden, SoFi Stadium, Burj Khalifa, Burj Khalifa, and we actually just completed the second tallest building in the world, which is Merdeka over in Malaysia. So we're a very diverse company that's been doing work for 120 years. And as a result of that, we have this, surprisingly, we actually have a culture of innovation. So I've been in various roles, but as about 15 years ago, started getting involved in rolling out 3D technology, modeling and such, which was new for us. That then led to my interest in AR and VR. How can we take those models of what's going to be built and bring them out into the field? How can we actually leverage this in a very dynamically changing environment? So this is a fantastic opportunity to be here and in front of you.
Thanks, all. So let's get started and maybe talk a little bit about some things that would be helpful for new folks just starting with XR projects. One of the things about XR tech, it can be a blessing and a curse. It's super exciting. It's super cool. It's super gee whiz when people first see it. But at the end of the day, we all know that we've got to have an ROI or some kind of idea about how we're going to deliver some real value. And some of you may have experienced people in your organization, stakeholders, it might be IT, it might be management, it might be others that say, we know how to do this today. The world is going around without XR tech. We've got these flat screens. We've got our physical prototypes. We do what we do. What proof points do you guys have? What can you offer somebody that's getting that kind of naysayer or let's say non-believer to explain the benefits at a very fundamental level?
I dropped the ROI bomb, so
you sure did, Ryan. That's why I'm going to go to you first.
When Jay asked this question, I immediately thought of my wife. When we first started at Collins Aerospace, she was in human factors engineering, and she spent two of the first 3 months with the company arguing with a mechanical engineer and an entire systems engineering group about whether or not a radio that they were working on could be serviced while wearing flight gloves. And what ended up happening was she got fed up. She was like, I'm not signing off on this because I know that it can't, I know that it can't be done. She ended up going out and buying a pair of flight gloves and having all these naysayers prove it out. Well, fast forward a little bit, we created virtual prototype modeling, a proprietary solution within Collins. And when we added the ability to adjust the hand size from a 5th percentile female up to a 95th percentile male in order to prove to ourselves and our engineers, I need to be able to reach this screw, and I can't do that if I have a 50th percentile male hand. I showed that to my wife, and she said, that right there would have saved me about 2 months of argument with a whole bunch of different engineers. Now, that's kind of anecdotal, but it shows the case that we have seen with virtual prototype modeling countless times through the last 10 years. Design engineers coming in and saying, this is the way that a design should be. And we heard about that a design review should be. We heard about that earlier this morning. Where people said that it helps you see better. It helps you have empathy. It helps you understand what that other person's perspective is going to be. And so it's reduced the amount of argument that we're having amongst teams. And as a result, we're able to transition products into our factories a lot easier. One thing I will say, though, is that it's not all about XR. XR is just one of many ways that you can visualize something, and hanging the entire weight of the benefit that you get from these technologies on 3D visualization or on augmented reality. It's a little bit like saying a movie's not worth seeing if you can't see it in color. Yeah. It just helps you see better, and as a result of being able to see better, you can see better.
Yeah. Now the color thing makes sense. I think the other takeaway there too is like have some example that you can go in and just show. Oh, because yeah. At the end of the day, as you guys all know that have been in this, like seeing is believing with this stuff. So maybe whether it's an iPad or VR headset or something, it's like, let me just show you an example. Because for people that haven't seen it or non-believers, you can do a lot of talking with a lot of words.
And that's exactly what our demonstrations look like. We have a can set. This is an actual design with a naysayer who came in, said that he didn't think it was going to be worth his time. And at the end of it, he said, you need to use this on every single one of your demonstrations, because I didn't think it was going to be worth my while, and it earned 750% the cost of what it took to do the exercise. So,
Jim, non-believers.
Actually, our first, well, I'll start with the positive. I'm going to do the positive. So our first proof of value was, I think, probably 10 years ago in healthcare. And it was VR in healthcare. Because typically what happens, right? You're working off of 2D plans. The problem is the typical user, nurses, doctors, have no clue how to interpret them. So what we did was we 3D models of the building systems, all the medical equipment, and then we bring the doctors and nurses in early during the design process to help lay out all the patient rooms or what have you, medical suites. And if normally what would happen is we build the building, build a space. We could be a $500 million ambulatory care facility. The doctors and nurses come in and suddenly they don't like it. It doesn't work. We have a whole division, actually, it's a shame to say, we have a whole division that comes in and does renovations after we hand over a building. Because owners often, the typical owner doesn't get it. So we bring them in early. And also you're catching problems early, because our work is sequential. If you have to solve one problem, the work after it can't start. You could bring a job to a grinding halt very quickly if you're standing there trying to figure something out that you could have figured out long before during design on a computer. So we've seen instances of like millions, tens of millions of dollars in savings from avoiding issues that would have come later. Because if you're spending the money you're going to spend in construction is going to be far more expensive than if you're sitting on a computer during the design phase.
So remind some people of pain they've had in the past that could be avoided in the future. I like it.
Yeah, I will say that it's from my experience, it seems that engineers get far too comfortable with CAD. Just saying the CAD model is perfect. I see it. It looks great. I'm fine with it the way it is. And more often than not, once we bring that into a VR environment, we show them what it actually looks like for a user using the machine. They change their minds. They're like, oh, I didn't see this aspect of it before. Oh, I didn't realize it was going to be this close, this closed-in cab or something to that effect. So pretty much every time when someone comes up to me and says, oh, I don't need to do a VR review. I know this design works fine. I mean, the FEA comes out well, like it'll perform the way it's supposed to. And then we sit in the cab or start doing whatever we need to do on the vehicle in VR. They pretty much always come away with unique aspects or something that they never saw and are almost turned around immediately as a believer at that point, because they're like, oh, if I wouldn't have seen this, we would have had a problem. I mean, we've designed an example is we design hoods for our machines. So one of the big important things in the tractor is visibility all around. You don't want to run over someone in the field. So you need to see everywhere. You have to have good visibility. And so we had the people who designed the hood were so confident that the visibility of the hood was absolutely as good as it can be based on the CAD models, looking at the 2D CAD models. Like it's great visibility. We projected these sight lines down in the CAD and everything is great. And so they're like, well, let's just look at it in VR. They sat down and immediately they're like, I can't see the tires. I don't know how am I supposed to drive through the rows of the field. We brought in customers that are like, this won't work for us at all. We don't know where the tires are. We don't know what we're running over in the field. And so just the different visualization you get in an immersive environment is enough to give you enough added benefit that it changes the design completely.
I mean, from the interior and architecture point of view, I mean, how many of you have renovated a house and changed out the flooring? How many times did you buy samples to just look at what that flooring is going to look like in your space. And you get this tiny little sample and you think it's going to work, you install it, and then your significant other says this isn't going to work. So this is the thing where, you know, VR, AR, all these technologies that are out there, just 3D visualization allows you to visualize these products in larger spaces. At least that's from the perspective that I'm coming from with the interior and architecture point of view. A ballroom like this size, you're talking about just off-the-shelf solutions. Now, what about when you're doing custom carpet? This carpet is not going to go in any other ballroom anywhere else in the world. Now you're making samples of this stuff. You're looking at little swatches, and you have to imagine what it looks like in a 35,000 square feet space. So how do you visualize these things without AR and VR? And that's where I think 3D and visualization comes in handy.
Yeah, for us, one of the big values or one of the big common threads, a challenge that we have in our business is going on site and having people involved in the team, subject matter experts that need to kind of weigh in on what is at that site that are from different geographic locations. So removing physical barriers by using, headsets to relay video streams back to that whole team, or 360-degree documentation tools to recreate those, capture that environment and then share that with that team, to have conversations for planning, for design inspection, construction. Has been a game changer across our business, because those tools have been not so niche in terms of like requiring a 3D model or requiring a certain combination of other tools and needs for that team. Anytime we have people on site and people not on site, we can bring those tools in to really provide more value. But to the point of getting people on board, it really is just showing them some examples of different ways to see what I see in the field. And they see it right away. It's so intuitive. Oh my gosh, if I could have used that on my last project, we would have solved all of these problems. Or I can completely understand intuitively, how I can communicate better, achieve better understanding across all these different people that have different expertise that all need to kind of communicate together to understand the problem and, come up with that solution there.
For Mars, I got to admit, you kind of hit home with the replace the floor example. I've lived that one. It was expensive.
I've lived that one recently
that's,
too. So.
That's a painful one. I think kind of the common thread and one of the maybe takeaways here is there's a lot of things that become expensive to deal with or fix if caught late in the process. And if we catch them earlier in the process and we can do that digitally, it's gonna be a whole lot better. We're gonna save that cost and we'll catch it. And that's only because now we've got the ability to actually capture things in 3D in a way to visualize them really, really well. So another topic that I'm sure you've heard a lot about and talked about today is sort of COVID. And it's interesting, when the COVID thing first happened, everyone started talking about, oh, we're all gonna do our meetings in VR. There's gonna be so much demand. And there has been, I think, increased demand for this class of solution. But I think it's also hindered some of your efforts and the things that you all have been working on. Can you guys talk maybe a little bit about how things have changed sort of since COVID? Because you were all doing this at full speed before, and you're doing it now, and my guess is it doesn't look the same.
So actually, I'll double back. I'll two birds, one stone. I'll go back and answer your question about challenges. COVID, our challenges really are at the company in terms of adoption it's the bookends. It's the top of the company and the bottom of the company, right? The leadership, and whether the leadership's bought in, whether they embrace technology, whether they recognize technology is an investment, not a cost. And then at the bottom end is like our superintendents out in the field, right? The people that muddy boot superintendents, 20, 30 years, they hate technology. So COVID actually accelerated the adoption because we were forced to. We started both actually, our executives are still struggling with Microsoft Teams, but we're getting there. But what it did was open a lot of people's eyes that there was these opportunities to leverage the technology. We did it for like remote inspections, like building inspections. Traditionally, you always have a building inspector come to the job site, always, and you have to schedule it. And if they don't show up, like literally, the job has to stop. And surprisingly, we started getting adoption. We've been holding true to that. Where building inspectors were doing it virtually. We bring the 3D model in. We then bring the remote headsets and cameras. And the building inspector was sitting in our office, and we'd have a superintendent walking the job with it. It was huge. It was eye-opening for us. That would have never happened in a million years if we weren't forced to out of necessity.
Yeah. So that solution that I talked about before that we created back in 2010, one of the reasons that it was successful throughout the pandemic was because when we created it, we said we didn't want it to hinge on the monument of our virtual reality lab in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We're a global company and we can't have everybody needing to come to that one location to be able to use it. So we made it something that was just as effective to use on a desktop. Granted, you can't put on a head mount display and demonstrate for people that tools and hands and things like that can or can't fit into the product at key moments. But we were able to continue to stay effective with the technology itself because it had an effective desktop interface. One of the things that COVID has absolutely done for us is that it has accelerated our movement into remote assist. Smart glasses were something that were seen as kind of novel. I was one of the naysayers on the technology before COVID hit. Luckily, we had some very tenacious, forward-leaning engineers within the company who were working on it, come hell or high water. And when COVID hit, they had already figured out how to be able to harden these devices, provision them throughout the company, and that's great. And they're heroes. With COVID, we'll see how the future looks. If with people coming back to the office, in person is best is the emerging mantra right now within Collins Aerospace and Raytheon Technologies. But even if everybody comes back into the office, I don't see us going back to a time when we don't use smart glasses for remote assist. If you've got a choice between putting on a pair of smart glasses and bringing in a machine supplier and getting that piece of machinery back online in hours as opposed to days, that's going to continue on no matter what. So we're just there faster now because of the urgency of what happened in 2020.
So did you have a lot fewer people visiting the monument?
Say that again?
Did you have a lot fewer people visiting the monument?
We had 0 people visiting the monument. So, it really depended on which states you were in.
Yeah.
Raytheon Technologies, Collins Aerospace is one of 4 companies within that umbrella. There was a facility in McKinney, Texas that has an immersive design center, and they continued to run at 60% capacity, which is a lot of people through that area because that state had different restrictions and requirements on who could and couldn't go into facilities. So,
yeah, to kind of piggyback off what you said, I mean, initially, we have our VR was limited to our virtual reality labs that we have in the company. We have numerous of them, so we have them spread out around the world, and that's where we did our design reviews. Well, those all shut down, and we weren't, I guess, unfortunately, we weren't nearly as prepared as you were. So we went to virtual reality models shown on 2D screens, like on people's laptops through Teams, and that was not good. I was not happy. But prior to that, we had been pushing for, we need portability, we need flexibility in our VR work, and there had been pushback, honestly, internally in the company. They're like, oh, we're fine with the labs we have. And now I think that's changed a lot. Now people understand, oh, we wish we could have had that portability prior to everything shutting down, because then we could have continued doing the design reviews we were doing working at least 90% capacity of what we had done rather than shutting down. So I wish we had been in better shape, but now now people understand why the need for portability, why we were pushing the need for portability and flexibility initially. Now I think they understand that better. So we get better support from the upper management to put in those capabilities.
I would say, I don't know, I have a couple, depending on the technology through COVID, we had different trajectories. So with my experience with our clients, what we were doing and opportunities that we had kind of end of 2019, beginning of 2020 for augmented reality and virtual reality, a lot of those were kind of dependent on getting together and having some kind of a group experience, or we were going to be doing at a meeting, something like that. So because we're so spatially diverse, and then because of, that was really the catalyst, was coming together. the opportunities for those in our business dwindled out. Now we're seeing them coming back, which is really exciting. But we kind of had a little bit of a hiatus with AR and VR in the ways that we were kind of trying to build up and use those. But on the other side, with assisted reality and reality capture, like I said before, I mean, those, and what we've alluded to other panelists, those really bloomed through COVID, right? It was just more opportunity for someone who was already local to capture what they needed or stream something back to a larger group of people. Our company, looking ahead, is also very focused on sustainability. And so what we've done through COVID, what we've built up, all of that infrastructure through COVID, is now, we're reusing or continuing that to kind of continue to do a lot of virtual site visits, things like that, through the lens of a sustainable way of doing our work.
So during COVID, so 2017, Mohawk launched a VR initiative. We launched this VR technology across all our showrooms in the United States. People could walk in, put on a headset, visualize all these products in these different environments that we built out and everything. Unfortunately, with COVID, we just had to shut down. All our showrooms mostly shut down, but we stopped using VR headsets because nobody's comfortable putting on a headset after somebody else has put it on. So we went through this whole 2 years where we just stopped using VR headsets altogether. However, our other VR platforms, so the web-based VR, the AR via our apps on our phones, that started picking up a lot more. And I think that's probably going to stay for a little while, just until everyone's comfortable with wearing a headset, number one, and headsets become cheap enough for everybody to have them in their pockets. So,
Jim, how about on Turner front? Builders got to build. COVID didn't slow anything down.
Actually, surprisingly, we had some slowdown. I think New York, we had some projects that got put on hold. Surprisingly, actually, we weathered the storm pretty nicely. It was, in fact, the second year of COVID, we had our best year ever putting work in place. So,
Wow.
It actually accelerated some work. Airports, for instance.
Yeah.
The owners accelerated the work at airports because they're empty.
Yeah, I heard a lot of there's a lot of people that are not going to labs anymore. So lab environments were dark, and I think it really showed the importance of trying to get these experiences out to other flat screens where people didn't have headsets. Big one. So we find ourselves in a little bit of another kind of hype cycle for this AR VR tech. I think this time it's called the metaverse. And there's, I don't even want to try to attempt to define it, but are there any elements of which you guys have heard of in this metaverse context, whether it's a technology or product or just a concept that is new to you and feels like it's got some value in the future that we should be looking at? Go, Allison. Go, Allison.
I mean, has value a little bit. I mean, I think one of the common threads that we've had, that we've discussed as panelists, has been increased communication and understanding. And I think whatever form of the metaverse is you're kind of, thinking about, part of it is communicating with people and maybe understanding where they're coming from or what it is the conversation is that you're having in that metaverse. And maybe what you're visualizing in that metaverse is a better visualization, which again, better understanding for that environment. I think bringing it into the industry, it's not the same, but I guess another big buzzword is our digital twins. But I think sometimes there's a lot of maybe similarities between what we're trying to do with digital twins, bringing information together from different sources and seeing that together. And then visualizing it in different ways, if it's XR or some other way of seeing that information together, live stream IoT data coming in and seeing that. So kind of like that, maybe going into, the next version of that would be something like a digital twin in a metaverse sense.
So in the construction industry, it takes more than one designer to create a building or structure. And I think that's where the social aspect of VR would come in, where you have multiple people in one virtual environment interacting with each other, looking at the same virtual product or something in VR, in AR, whatever that may be. I think that is probably the direction that we would move in, or would want to move in, at least from the construction and design point of view.
I think that, and we've heard a little bit about this already this morning, a better understanding of when and where to use which devices. There's a lot of hype around. It's been there forever about virtual reality. That virtual reality is going to like displace our need for a laptop or a smartphone or something like that. You think about something like an iPod. When Apple came out with the iPod, one of the things that all of the MP3 players on the market had messed up on was they were trying to put the entire user experience inside the device. And the thing that Apple figured out was there's some things that are just better to do on a computer. So we're not even going to give people the ability to do those things on an iPod. And as a result, they came out with a device that was a lot easier to use, and iPods became the new standard for MP3 players for a very long time. You have the same kind of thing with a smartwatch. When I bought a smartwatch, I bought it because I'm a cyclist and I like to be able to glance at my wrist when I'm on a ride and see what my heart rate is. And it's just, a convenience thing. Well, then I went to Chicago, and I was going to a restaurant about 15 blocks away, zigzagging through the town. And I put in the destination and I stepped outside of the hotel, and my watch buzzed me and told me that I had a turn coming up. And it occurred to me that I was going to be able to make this entire journey without having to pull out my phone a single time. I looked like a native Chicagoan, and it didn't ask me to do that. It just did it because it was good use of the technology. So I think that we're going to see if Meta and the metaverse, if all of that pans out and does it turn into the next hype cycle, I think it will be because it helped us realize that this is an ecosystem of devices, and there's times when they should be used and there are times when they're gimmicks.
Yeah, I think beware the buzz. Focusing on ROI and the problem you're going to solve, and just the technology you need to do that is key, because man, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise. Anyone else anything to offer?
I mean, I was just going to say, I think that's the concept of metaverse, which is the term I don't particularly care for, but the concept is something we've been sort of moving towards anyways, in terms of like collaborative design sessions, collaborative sessions in general, multiple users. I think that's something that everyone saw as kind of a beneficial thing, especially moving to more portability, whether it's, like I said, a smartphone, or whether you're using a headset, or whether you're using a desktop. You all need to exist within the same environment in order to adequately make decisions on designs, and or adequately essentially do your design products. So I think that's something we're moving towards anyways. I don't see it as necessarily anything, when saying the word metaverse doesn't make it different. I think that's there's benefit there, so that you can have people in multiple locations all together making decisions, as opposed to bringing them all to one location for a physical prototype or something. So I think it's somewhere we were going anywhere. I just think the word just sounded cool and people picked it up.
New word, same concept.
Yeah.
We'll give a plug to Charlie Fink. Anybody who knows Charlie Fink, he's a just monster in this space. He's got a very good book called The Metaverse. That came out before the metaverse term was co-opted by Meta. So anybody who's wanting to read a really good book with a lot of great quotable quotes in it, Metaverse is a really good book.
Charlie, thanks you. All right, I think with that, we will turn it over for questions. Are we circulating a mic for questions? What are we doing? Nope, I'm assuming no. Got one right here. Go ahead.
First of all, great discussion, great context, and so thank you. It's fantastic, and thanks for facilitating it. Awesome. What I'd like to understand is if any one of you can speak to, without going into the nitty-gritty details, what I that the practical aspect, right? So it was very obvious that the moment you put on a VR headset or AR last whatever it is, you know that these are 3D assets. And companies have been building 3D assets for a long, long time. Yet, going from traditional 3D building, look at my word, it's still important, but the traditional way of building on desktop, to practically moving it onto these type of headsets, there seems to be some kind of a huge void, something that we are missing. You know, anyone able to speak to that?
So maybe just to repeat the question, there's a lot today. Design is happening on desktops. We have 3D tools on desktops that work well. We have headsets that can show this stuff. Why isn't it happening on headsets? What's missing in between that we're not seeing more of this?
Content. One of the mistakes of XR is this thought that if you just see a static three-dimensional model in 3D, that it's going to be this massive thing. And it is the first time that you see it, it's great. But the content itself is just static without content. What Andrew was talking about here is something that I've seen also in that space with one of his competitors, where they said it's just a tractor until you put somebody in that cab and ask them to move that thing from here to here. And then they're like, this divide between these two windows, it's too big and I'm going to run over somebody, like Andrew was saying. So the breakthrough for us in that 2010 solution that I keep going back to was realizing that we need a pretty streamlined pipeline that goes from a CAD model to an in-context experience of that content in a virtual environment. And once we were able to do that, where people said, look, I can come and do this for less time than it takes me to put together a PowerPoint, you know, then it took off. It didn't require an ROI. It didn't require anything because it was practically free. So that's my opinion on
So it's like a lot of time and money to get the CAD into the headset.
That's getting it into the headset in a way that is contextually relevant to the problems that you're trying to solve.
Other questions? Okay, we got one here.
Pandemic Peter, Newport News Shipbuilding. Jim, we have a lot of similarities in that we're about 120 years old. We built nuclear aircraft carrier submarines. Drawings is how we did that for so long. We transferred to product model design out of 3D CAD about 14 years ago with some of our newer ships. And right now we've gone from talking about design and agreeing on how it should be designed and how it should be made through 3D CAD models, VR, into taking that 3D model and instead of putting it into a 2D drawing and then hand to someone to build, we had to actually force that hand by saying this ship will be built without drawings. Put the drawings away. So did you find that there was a time of force that you had to make that transformation? That's anybody that wants to answer that.
It was gentle pressure, but yes, there was definitely pressure. Because I remember I led the effort to roll out building information modeling, 3D modeling, and I remember, I don't know what that was, 15 years ago. And the challenge with us is also every building's unique. Our subcontractors for every project will be different. We never know who we're going to have on. We don't know their capabilities, their technological capabilities. So, we try to. I remember in New York in particular, I started there, which is surprising because it's where innovation goes to die. But I still started in New York. But what we did was we started working with each of the trades or subcontractors. They were already in 2D, so we don't like to use the word, but we mandated you are going to migrate to 3D. We didn't dictate which software they used. We said, look, we dictated the output, the deliverable. What do we need to then bring all the models together, coordinate, plan, schedule, all that sort of thing. So we gave them the freedom. We didn't push them too hard on like standards. Early on, the subs would come back and say, look, this is going to cost me extra, and we'd say, go pound sand, figure it out. What we did was, what was great was we had a couple of early projects. Actually, Yankee Stadium was one of the big ones. So Yankees, we got all the trades on board because the owner was pushing it. And what happened was when certain trades were embracing the models, they found that they could do more prefab offsite, modularization, less material waste on site. They're more profitable. And so their competitors saw that. And in some cases, we had subs that were bidding at lower bids because they were far more productive. So that's what then drove adoption, because the business case was starting to get made. You could see this is, you better get on board or else. And we still had to push. I mean, that's the nature of it. But and it just sort of took off, and then it sort of spread around the country. Actually, I would say sort of East Coast, West Coast, mid. But it grew from that, and then eventually it just became, now it's just how you do business.
Another quick one.
Okay, I'm Indra from Arupana, and I saw that you guys here are like the architecture of any XR application. But my question is very simple. So if we're creating something like application or website, we can do a quick mock-up using wireframe to just like show in a fastest way what are the end products going to look like. My question is, how do you guys doing it in an XR?
Everyone hear that? Quick prototyping. How does
Interns. I'm not even joking. So that application was originally created by interns. We had no software engineers on my team. We had been through everything that was commercially available. We found that there were glaring holes in almost all of it that we had discovered needed to be fixed. And we figured that the only way that we were ever going to have it happen was to do it ourselves. So I went to my boss and I said, we've got this great intern coming in. She's going to be with us for 9 months, software engineering undergrad. And I think I can chunk this out in small pieces so that it ends up feeling like a number of interconnected homework assignments or class projects. And at the end of that, we had what we have today. Fast forward about a year or so, and we wanted to have a little bit more of an immersive head mount display experience. So we brought in a 10th grader, and he's today at NVIDIA. And this 10th grader, we said, so, we want you to create a model of a virtual work cell up on the deck of our Building 108 facility, because it's on the approved route for foreign nationals, and there's government equipment down there. And, so it feels like we're in the factory, but we're not actually in the factory, and it would pass muster from a audit perspective. I thought that was going to take him the entire summer. About 1 month in, he came to me and he said, I've got it all done. I taught myself Python during that time. And I put on the head mount display and said, I don't know why I'm working here, because, because this was really amazing work that was coming out of a 10th grader. He was an uncommon 10th grader, but it's everything that my team does, we start small, whether it's through using interns or doing those wireframe mock-ups if it's something like a web-based application, and it's with applications, and I'm not going to name any, but we all know the big players in the XR space. It's pretty easy to get your hands dirty and prove a concept without putting a lot of money and time into it.
Interns for prototypes. There it is. Thank you. Well, looks like we have come to the end of our time. Thank you all so much for making it to the session. And let's hear it for our panelists. You guys, great job. Thank you so much. And I think if you have further questions, you can maybe try and track them down after the session outside, if you guys have got a few. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the show.